area of media. They want the people of the South to be ashamed of their heritage. I want you to know I thank God that I'm the descendant of a Confederate Southern American. My dad was a real son. That means his daddy fought the invaders. I'm not that far removed then from that situation called the war between the states. But I want you to know that I'm not ashamed of it. The reason that there's so much about it, there's a spiritual aspect that I don't have time to go into. But the one thing that was the basic foundation of the Southern people and the culture that they passed down to us was that the Bible was the infallible Word of God, and that Jesus Christ was, and still is today, folks, the only means of salvation. They understood this. The northern invaders didn't agree with that totally, and that's a whole other subject. I don't have time. But I just want you to know that you may never have heard about it, but even during the war, great revival swept through the Confederate armies. Somebody asked a chaplain one time, shortly after the war, if that had happened in the Northern Army, and he said, go ask them. The fact is, it's sad to say it didn't happen there, but it did happen in the South, and it all was a part of the heritage that they passed down to us. So don't ever be ashamed of that they passed down to us. Don't ever let nobody make you feel like you owe an apology to somebody because your ancestors fought the northern invaders. What they did was righteous and just. They knew what they were fighting about, and they knew it was right. So in this day, as we pay this final tribute to this valiant man that gave his life 146 years ago, in this farewell, one of the greatest things that you and I can do is to commit ourselves, if you haven't already done it, to honoring the people such as Capt Thurmond, to sharing the truth. If you don't know it, learn it. It requires effort, but you can find out the truth. And as Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It will set everybody free that will listen to it. Thank God for men like Captain Philip Thurmond.
At this time, we'll have a reading of the obituary by Miss Linda Miller, United Daughters of the Confederacy, Border Rangers, Chapter 2580.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Miller, and I'm a member of the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And I'm here today to tell you a little about the life of Captain Philip James Thurmond. Philip James Thurmond was born on October 24th, 1826 in Elmhurst County, Virginia. He was the son of Philip James Thurmond and Mary Tompkins Field, and the grandson of William Thurmond, who served as a sergeant major in the Revolutionary War. He was the sixth of 13 children, and he married Sarah Pauline Jones on January 18, 1852, in Virginia, and was the father of 4 children, Mary, Charles, Sarah, and Martha. Martha having died at a young age. He enlisted for service on September 1st, 1862, at Red Sulphur Springs, Monroe County, alongside 6 of his brothers. Philip was the leader of Thurmond's partisan Rangers of Monroe County, with at least 175 men serving in his organization. This group was formed to protect their homes and families, but then ventured out to other areas for support of the cause. The Battle of Winfield in Winfield, West Virginia occurred in the early morning hours of October 26, 1864. The battle had been going on for about an hour when Captain Thurmond was wounded in the abdomen in front of the Winfield courthouse. He lingered for several hours before dying. He was 38 years and 2 days old. The story goes that his brother Elias allowed himself to be captured so that he could be with his brother until his death. Later that morning, under a flag of truce, members of the Rangers came through Union lines with the coffin to claim Thurmond's body. He was buried on the property of James W. Hogue, who was known to be a Confederate sympathizer. Burial was done with the understanding that when the war was over, his family would return for him. Since this never happened, Captain Thurmond has lain in an unmarked grave for 146 years, until plans were made to rebury him. Today, at this historic occasion, Captain Thurmond's great-great-granddaughter, Mrs. Cynthia Hayes of Milton, West Virginia, and granddaughter of his daughter, Sarah Alice, will receive his flag and, along with her children, see him laid in his final resting place with the honor a soldier deserves. Today, his journey will come to a close as we lay his remains to rest. Everyone involved with this historic event feels that it's a great honor, and for most of us, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to be a part of a history honoring our Confederate heritage.
At this time, we'll have some words from General Robert E. Lee.
In the spring of 1861, when thousands and tens of thousands of young men were forming to create massive armies in the eastern part of Virginia, in the western part, the smaller groups were formed. They were called Rangers and partisan Rangers. Their purpose was to, while the majority of the men folk were off in the massive armies, the purpose of the small groups was to protect the home front, the women, the children, the others that were left at home. It wasn't long before they recognized that in addition to acting on their own, they could also form up with various rebel units, various military units, and help to cause greater grief upon the invading forces. In September of 1862, Captain Thurmond formed what was formerly known as Thurmond Rangers. I guess you could describe him as a rather aggressive individual. He was always there to support the regular troops. And when you think about the territory that he covered, ranging from Monroe County to the Big Sandy, and all points in between, he had a tremendous responsibility. He was called upon by the regulars, and oftentimes would act as a security force, if you will, for the small communities. And maybe a small group of Union forces might try to force themselves upon communities such as Winfield, Milton, other communities. There was Captain Thurmond with his Rangers, and he would hold off the federal forces until such time as greater forces of the regular army could come in and support. There were good examples. Lynchburg is a good example of federal forces being held off at great length until regular forces could come in and support. In October of 1862, the federal forces traveled up the Canal River. The sole purpose was to establish a series of breastworks in and around Winfield. And having accomplished that, they would secure the Red House shoulders. They would stop all Confederate traffic going north and south. It wasn't long before the Confederate leadership found out that the federal forces were here. Captain Thurmond was given the charge to come up and dislodge them. On the morning of October 26th, Captain Thurmond and about 400 Rangers, two companies, arrived in Winfield, not far from the city. Didn't take any time to rest. They just formed up with men, and they began attacking the breastworks. Now, while there were only about 80 Federals on the other side of the breastworks. The breastworks were so significant that there was no way that you could penetrate. And within about an hour, it was recognized that the effort to dislodge the Union forces was fruitless. And about the same time that that decision was made, that they recognized that that was impossible to move enough, Capt Thurmond was shot in the afternoon. You know, we think a lot about Capt Thurmond, but we also need to think about his family, because there was Elias. He responded with love. Could have gotten away, could have left with the others.